This is the Pam Sowder Podcast. With over 2 decades of field and corporate experience and voted one of the most influential women in direct selling, Pam helps mesh the daily needs of distributors to everyday life challenges. It's time to get over yourself, fire up your productivity, work less, and live more. Learn the self-limiting #F-bombs holding you back, fear, frustration, and failures, and turn those F-bombs into friendships, fun, and freedom. Ready? Let's get this party started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pam Sowder Podcast. I am so excited about today's guest. I am here with Howard Falco. Howard's an author, a spiritual teacher, and an expert and coach on human understanding and potential. He's a peak performance or mindfulness coach to college and professional athletes, CEOs, corporate executives, and individuals looking for a new way of overcoming life's challenges and achieving exceptional results. Howard's authored 2 books about self-improvement and the keys to personal creation. His first one is titled I Am: The Power of Discovering Who You Really Are, and his second book is Time in a Bottle: Mastering the Experience of Life. Through his books, speeches, and private coaching, Howard presents the wisdom regarding how to harness more of the creative energy we each have within us. Offered are the keys to taking complete control of the creative process of life and time from this precious moment forward. Howard, I'm so happy to have you with me today. How are you?
I'm great. I'm honored to be on your podcast. This is going to be fun.
It is. You know, we've been friends for a while. I was trying to think back. I remember buying the book I Am, looking at it, and putting it on my shelf. Then about a year goes by, and I buy it again, not remembering I'd already bought it. I bought it at the airport, devoured it. What was going on before? And then why did I do that? Do you have any understanding on that at all?
Yeah, something in you was calling to it then, and you felt what was in there would be helpful to you on your journey and what you were experiencing at the time, but there wasn't that full readiness yet. And, a lot of people will buy the book, they'll put it on their shelf, they'll read bits of it. Some people will read a chapter or two, then they'll come back to it a few months later, and then they'll get into more of it. So it's about divine timing, and it's about being in the right space, but it's nice to know that it's there for you,
Oh, yeah. And, I'm going to pull it up right now because I've got something I want to ask you, and then I've got a series of great questions I think everyone can benefit from. So on page 103 of I Am, the quote here is, "Who you were in the past is not who you are now. You decide who you are in each and every moment." To me, that's the quote that I pull off all the time. So who you were in the past is not who you are now. Why do we keep thinking that that's who we are now?
Because the mind likes to gravitate to the known, and the past is something that we know. And sometimes we carry a negative past with us into the present, not realizing that it doesn't serve us for what we're trying to create. What I offer in that quote is one of the beautiful things about life, and really one of the core principles in the book is the idea that you get to decide in this moment who you want to be. And you can start generating that energy and demonstrating that version of yourself right now, and life will immediately begin to respond to that. Now, there is a little bit of what I call a karmic tale from the past, because people like to tune to who they knew that you were. But eventually that fades and the new you starts to shine. But it's such a hopeful idea because we're not chained to the past. We get to decide right now. If we want to change everything in one single moment, everything can change.
And then everybody's going to say, how? I want to change everything. I want to step into that moment. I want this. I want that. So can you give me any guidelines for that?
Yeah. Jumping right into this. Yeah. Well, the guideline, actually the books are all designed to do that. But to give you sort of a thumbnail sketch of that, the idea is, it's a few parts. One, most importantly, is that in order to break yourself from your past, you have to make peace with it. You have to stop resisting that it's who you were. You have to stop making excuses. You have to take responsibility, but you can take responsibility without taking any of the 3 poisons, I call them, which are shame, guilt, and regret. You cannot condone the behavior anymore, anything you don't want. But you can just say, I'm just going to take responsibility that that's who I was. And to delve into that and understand why is a big part of the forgiveness and the healing. Once you realize that, like I often tell people that I work with, in every moment of your life, you have been doing the very best you can at that moment. That is the self-evident truth. That doesn't mean it can't change, but that's been what's been happening. So once you make peace with it, you're then free to then open up to new possibilities in the moment. And then the work then from that moment is to increase the self-honor, self-respect, and self-love to the highest level you can possibly get it to, meaning you're going to root out any impediments to that love, which includes any beliefs or thoughts you were told your whole life about who you were. Those have to be removed in order for you to see the potential that's in front of you, which is limitless for each one of us. Once you can get to that part, then you can start stepping in and acting towards it. But the ego will not allow you to act towards anything that you don't believe for yourself on a subconscious level. So you can think you want all the things that you write on your vision board, but if you haven't rooted out the deep limiting thoughts that are in the soul, then the ego is going to sabotage, or find a way to whittle your day away so you wake up and before you know it, it's dinner time and you wonder why you didn't accomplish anything today. Versus when you believe in yourself fully, and again, I'm throwing this out in the first few minutes here, this is a process to this, but when you really truly believe in yourself, that's when the floodgates open. And that's when the energy within you, there's no resistance to creating. And even more divine is that, and this is a deeper part of the work, is that there's no limits to life responding back to you in a way that matches.
When you say life, how do you define that word life? What do you mean by that?
Boy, that's a really great question, Pam. So life is everything outside of you. All the people, places, and things right now in your universe, meaning the people closest to you, the things in the room, the events that are happening around you. That is life itself, the whole collective energy coming together to give you this experience right now. And so as, for example, this podcast, I love using real-time events. I do it every time I do an interview. This podcast would not be coming into your ears if you were not open to this information and saying, you know what? I want to better myself. I want to learn how I can raise the level of what I believe in for myself. And that's one of the reasons I'm on this podcast. Well, just that notion of honoring yourself is allowing the universe to flood you, at least for this hour or however long the podcast is, with some great insight. But that's how it works. Versus if you didn't believe in yourself or you didn't feel worthy, you would find a way not to be hearing these words. You wouldn't be listening to it. Not that this is the end all be all, but it just shows you some people open to things that are in their awareness, and some people shut it off because it doesn't match with what they believe about themselves.
I see that all the time. I'll have people that'll come up and say, oh, I just love your podcast. And others say, well, I haven't listened yet.
I haven't had the time, I haven't had a chance, right? And that's a rationalization because we don't have or not have time. We make time. Right.
And typically, Howard, they're the ones that are saying, I really want this. I really want this. In other words, they really want their business to take off. And I want to ask you a question about some of the major discoveries that you've had along your journey to an expanded understanding of life.
One of the most powerful ones is that we are in 100% control of how we perceive and react to the events of our reality. 100% control. When we realize that. Until then, we're on autopilot with the genetics that were given to us and the nurturing and the upbringing that we received. But once we realize that we have control of how we want to perceive and react, that begins to start a new sense of control. I realized that we each have the incredible opportunity every day to define, declare, and demonstrate who we want to be. And as long as we're in tune with the process and we believe in it and we're willing to go the extra mile every day to get there, that nothing can stop us. And there's been endless examples around the world of this, of people that have set an intention and didn't let anything stop them from getting there. One of the ones I love in pop culture from U.S. history is when Kennedy said, we're going to go to the moon. And he set that intention for the nation which I thought was really cool because it was a way to show how powerful we are as a nation and as just the human spirit in general, that we could work to get there. And within a decade, we got there. I mean, that is just an incredible example of what's possible when you set intention and then you collaborate with people around you. What can happen? And for individuals in the works business, it's when they collaborate with their family, when they collaborate with the people that they work with, when they collaborate with friends. So, but it all stems from that belief and that intention. So that's really exciting to know. And then there's some deeper ones that I discovered that, the things that we think we have to fear, we don't really have to fear. And this is a little bit of a deeper discussion maybe for another time, but even the notion of death is an illusion. And that's a bigger and deeper one, but it's an important one because it removes all fears when you take that one away, and that allows you to be your best self. And this has been taught for thousands of years. From some of the best teachers in history have been trying to demonstrate that idea to liberate mankind. So it's a little bit deeper, but so these are some of the notions that I realized.
I've realized that too. As you know, I do a lot of work and a lot of study, and I've realized that too. It still doesn't mean I'm going to go jump off a building.
No.
Right. But it does give me peace and clarity. And it makes me somewhat fearless, in going after some of the things that I want. And I'm like, wow, I always tell everybody we're here to create. Just, like Kennedy's saying that about the moon. We're here to create. And when I see people think that they've arrived somewhere and they just stop. They stop doing whatever it was to be successful. And you've worked with a lot of athletes, top level athletes, pro golfers, NFL, and you've probably seen this with their work as well. So can you kind of describe what's going on there? Why would I get to a point and just like lay it all out and set down?
That's why it's so important to continue to have goals and continue to have intention. So you keep your energy moving towards something. But what I see at a high level is people get to a comfort zone where they're comfortable. They've reached the limit of what they believe is possible for themselves. And they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to try anything new because if they change their swing, they might get worse. So they just stay in that middle of the pack every single PGA Tour event, and they don't push themselves to get better. Where other people, especially the highest performers in the world, are constantly looking for the edge. What's the next edge? How can I expand myself? And are fearless in that ability to try new things because they know it's going to be a win-win. And this is what I teach to, especially to high-level athletes. It's a win-win because if you try it and it works, then you've expanded and there aren't any limits for you. If you try it and it doesn't work short-term, you're going to get information. You're going to find out something about why it didn't work. And we know from science that when scientists are trying to put a new formula together for a new compound or a new pharmaceutical or something new in the world, they get excited when there's a failure because they know that they're getting closer to the end result. So they just keep trying combinations until they get the one that work. And I think that's a real important one for people listening today, is to keep trying new things, to be open, to don't take the failure as, oh, it's never going to work because that one person said no to me and therefore everyone's going to say no. That is a trap of the mind. And that's how it keeps you limited.
And, some people, Howard, they create so much drama in their lives. And this is unfortunate, but I see this a lot with women. We just create just obstacles and we want to go after something, but then we allow something to come in or a thought to somebody to say something to us, which takes us down a rabbit hole. So why do we do that? Why do we even allow it?
Well, remember, everything's got an intention to it, and drama serves a purpose, and the purpose is to experience the negative energy, experience the struggle. And you'd say, why would someone want to experience the struggle? Because struggle may have been comfortable all their life. That's what may have been in the family genetic line. It may be part of the genetics. So I often say that, even though I don't like this saying, I'm going to say it anyways, you have to fight for your happiness. You have to fight for your abundance. And that means turning yourself and being a witness to yourself to see what you keep allowing to be created in your life and how you can make steps to change that and really reverse the genetic conditioning, reverse the nurturing, and emerge into this new version of yourself. But it takes work at first. It takes real work to become really myopic and a real witness to yourself in order to change. But that is the birthright of every human being. We all have the same ability to go after, especially in this great country, we have the ability to go after what we want. And the only thing stopping you, the old saying is you. So the fuel for that, besides words, the real fuel for that comes from the realization of who you really are and what your real worth is. Because once you see that, then you'll stop at nothing. But if you see a limited version of who you are, or someone who's not as worthy because of X, Y, and Z had happened in your life, then it's going to limit that vision on those possibilities.
Well, who are we really? I mean, when you said that, so who are we?
Well, we are creative beings with infinite potential. So who are we at this moment is defined by the current circumstances of our life at this moment. That is the self-evident truth of who we are. And we can look at being a mother or a father or a son or a brother or in a certain business or defined by a certain occupation. But what we really are is infinitely creative. And we have the infinite ability to demonstrate new versions of ourselves every single day. So we're part of an infinite universe. And this gets a little deeper with the cosmology of life, but I start time in a bottle by talking about the nature of infinity and how there is no end to time and space, which means there is no end to life. Life is expanding creatively infinitum. It's a hard one sometimes for the mind to wrap itself around, but being part of that universe, that unending universe, we are also infinitely creative. That's why when we don't create or we stagnate, we feel out of touch because the universe is still expanding and moving. And if we don't move with it, we start to feel out of touch. Like when we get older and if we're not at least in tune with what the music is and the culture, we start to feel out of touch with the younger generation. But the more we put our attention on it, we don't feel so out of touch. And the more we learn things like how to use Instagram and how to use Twitter and how to use Snapchat, all of a sudden we're right back in the vibe and we feel a little bit more alive. So I think for some people, they're happy with where they're at and they don't need to continue to expand. But for others who want to continuously expand and be on the edge, it's important to keep your mind open to how to do that. And, this moment is one of those.
I've noticed with people that come here to Florida, they come prepared to live. They come and they're working out, they're outside, they go see new plays, and there's just all kinds of new opportunity here, great new food, everything. And sometimes I'll go back home and I see people talking in a different way, Howard, almost preparing to die. Does that make sense to you? And what's going on there?
So some people are pioneers that want to be on the edge and want to keep moving and want to keep expanding. And other people are just happy with where they're at and content living a life where they're comfortable at a certain status in life or a certain experience of life. When I go back to high school reunions, I see this all the time. I run into some friends that are out there doing new creative things, and then other friends, they haven't changed one single bit since high school. They're the same person. They talk the same way. They're doing the same things, and that's fine. That's great for them, but it's just every individual has to make the choice of what they want. And I've always enjoyed being a pioneer and being on the edge, the creative edge. And I think that's really what entrepreneurs really are, is people who are on the edge, who are willing to create something new for themselves, to break out of the molds of what your family generations have done, have done for generations, or to break out of the what a lot of people in your town or your state are doing. So it takes a strong spirit to do that.
I'll be talking in front of a group. This just happened recently, and I tell my story. I weave it through how we started the company and the products and the opportunity. And at the end, I invite people to join us on this great adventure. And then I tell why I'm doing it, what it does for me. And I look out and people are crying, tears are welling up. It's like the first time I think that they've heard in a long time that there's hope for them, that they could actually do something different. So what's going on there? For people, is it just, do they not hear these messages of hope and that they can do or have anything?
I think the minute they can relate to you and see the young version of you in themselves, it's hopeful, because to see what you've created and how you've created it with this fearless attitude, this open-mindedness, this willing to knock on doors and get turned down time after time until it worked. So I think that's very inspirational, very hopeful, especially to a world where we are pounded with negativity. We can be if we keep the channels open to it all day long, because there's so much negativity in the world. I think the stat is that about 95% of the world thinks from a predominantly negative perspective. So you can see how the pyramid shakes out from a standpoint of success in life, how 5% don't let that bother them and just go full bore into life every day, creating and believing and keeping a positive energy. So when they hear you tell your story, that breaks through all that negativity, and they're like, there's hope. If she can do it, I can do it. And that's really what I think so many of us need to see to help lift us to a greater state of being. Because the people that are listening to this podcast should know that there isn't a human being on the planet that isn't worthy of all the success that you've created, or all the success you can create for yourself. Mm-hmm. But it starts with the belief inside. If you don't have it inside, the energy, your creative energy, will not go out and validate something it doesn't believe in. It will validate exactly what it believes in. And if that's limitation, that's what it's going to go out and validate.
And when you feel like you're moving towards something, just creating something, getting up and you've discovered something stirs up within you, and you suddenly have this enormous amount of energy and drive and clarity, and you get up early and you want to keep going. And, I call it the lustful stage of business, when that stage kicks in. And over time, that energy starts to wane a little bit. And this is where I've seen, and you've coached a lot of people on our team, Howard, and I appreciate this so much, because you've given them a lot when they get to this level. What happens to that energy over time? Because you know what? That's what we miss, that lustful honeymoon stage of those early stages of finding something new like this.
What happens is that from the deepest perspective, your ego, meaning all the energy that goes out of you, has to go out and validate what you believe to be true, or protect or defend what you believe to be true on a daily basis. So let's say somebody is here and they get inspired and they go to here. As soon as they build up enough of a validation in the outside world with their business that matches this, then there's nowhere to go. It just wanes, because this is what they believe for themselves. They're achieving it. And now it's just, okay. So that's why this circle of belief has to continue to expand. Okay, now I accomplished this. Can I get to this level? And am I willing to commit to that, to the energy, to the time, to everything, am I willing to put my life in enough balance to do that? So those are the challenges that sometimes that individuals face in how far they want to expand. And again, some people, there's no limit to that circle. They'll just keep going and going and going. And that's why we get so inspired through business and sports by people that have accomplished things, and we marvel at what they've done. And we see the finished product, but we didn't see the journey, right? And all the hours and all the blood, sweat, and tears of getting there, and the consistency over years. But that's what it takes. We're in a world that loves shortcuts. And the hard truth is there are no shortcuts. There just aren't any, except one. And that's self-awareness. To me, that is the real, true, and powerful shortcut in life. And so that's why I've dedicated my life to this work, because if you're looking to expand who you are and drive everything you want to create, you've got to have the engine behind you of the belief in yourself. And that comes from being inspired through an awareness of who you really are. So I think that's why it wanes. People reach a milestone and then they've climbed the mountain and, okay, I'm done. But They haven't looked and said, oh, there's another peak a little bit higher over there I could do. I'd like to push myself to do that.
So that, they get there, they sit down, they become complacent, but then things start to unravel. And then they're like, well, wait a minute, I don't like this anymore. And they might, Howard, I've seen them stay in a place like that for 2 to 3 years and not even know they're there, not aware that they're there, they don't have any self-awareness that they've just sat down.
Yeah, that comes from the original belief was not a true belief of who they were. So they expanded into it, but shrunk back to what they really believed about themselves because they didn't step up and say and accept the fact that they have achieved this. They are of this level of abundance, of this level of success, and they can even go further than that. Instead, it's been too uncomfortable and they've shrunk back. That's why I said there's no shortcut. It has to be authentic. The belief has to be authentic. And that takes real work in really rooting out any of the limitation. And again, there's layers to that. It's not just your personal experience. It's not just what you were told when you were a child. There's some genetics that are at play that like to express themselves the older we get, and try and kind of pull us back by the shirt collar. And that's the one, but more aware we are of that, the more empowered we are to go, nope, I'm going this way. Nice try. Ain't going to happen here.
How do we talk to this ego? Because I've heard, and I've come to the conclusion, I can't fight it because the more I fight it, the bigger it gets. So I just get into a quiet space in my mind and go, okay, there it is. I can feel it. I can sense it. The fear coming up, I almost talk to it a little bit, say, fear, I know you're there. However, I'm going this way. I am going here. Or you'll hear, you can't do that. Nobody's ever done that. Who do you think you are? These are things that we've heard. Money doesn't grow on trees, blah, 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 blah. What are some simple things that I can do to talk to this ego?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, that energy, when it comes up, that negative energy, it's tangible. You can feel the weight.
Yes. It's very real, Howard. It's not, it can hit you so hard. I've sat in fear at some points in my life for 6 months or several years, just set. And then I come out of it. I'm like, what was that? Yeah.
And I've experienced the same thing, and it's very heavy and it's very visceral. So the way through that comes from sheer will. But what fuels the will is the belief and the intention combined. The intent of what you want to do combined with the belief that you're worthy of it. That is your light through the darkness. And then it just takes putting one step in front of the other, no matter how heavy or how hard that step is, but you do it and you push yourself. And then to really melt the ego, it helps to ask a couple questions. In other words, is this thought I'm having true? Mm-hmm. And then even more importantly, does that thought serve me in any way? And once you realize it doesn't serve you, it only seems to bring you down, that's when you're like, okay, I'm done. That was quick. It's over. I'm on my way. And you don't even think about it. You put your head down, you finish your day, and you go through whatever you have to do to create action and energy. Now, one of the things is important to know, because people love lists, check off lists. Without a true belief behind the action, it's what I call a spiritually dead behavior. Because you're going through the motions without the energy behind the action. You just want to make sure you've checked off the list so you can feel good about yourself. But there wasn't a belief when you made that phone call. There wasn't a belief when you sent out that email. It didn't carry the energy of you and what you believe to be true. So it's a real important distinction to not just make lists and go through your list and say, I just did that. I'm demonstrating, it has to be authentic. And if it's not, you got to dig in and find out why you're not in that full state of spiritual, that real powerful energy, because that's what affects people around you.
I taught on this just recently. I'll write something, Howard, and I can feel the love and the energy all over it. And I'll put it out there and it gets a ton of likes, a ton of comments, and a ton of shares. And somebody else could take those very words, not believe any of it, just copy and paste, and they put it out there and they get nothing. Is that similar to what you're talking about? It's about being who you are, being authentic in who you are, and not trying to copy and paste and use someone else's words. And even I see them getting out of their gifts and trying to be somebody else, be this person that they really truly aren't.
You cannot fool the universe.
Yeah.
Can't do it. There are no shortcuts but self-awareness. You can't do it. You can fake, this whole thing, fake it till you make it. It's not true. Now, again, when you're honest with yourself about where you're at, when you believe that you're going to get there, doesn't mean you have to believe you're there, but if you believe you're going to get there, no matter what, that's authentic.
Yeah.
But it's a big misnomer to, the whole act as if, there's been a whole generation based on that, where they all want the fancy cars and just everything that demonstrates, I've seen so many ads on Instagram, and I find out later that the guy rented all the house, rented the cars, and tries to put out this thing that he's made all this money online doing whatever. It's just, it's nauseating. But because they're so desperate to demonstrate, rather than just being authentic and talking to people, and being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is where I'm at my path, but I can do it. I'm going to do it. You can do it too. People with much more buy into that authenticity.
Yeah, because I would say in the beginning, no, but we're going there. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm at right now, but I'm working towards that. I'm building towards that. And I had the utmost faith.
Yeah. And I think, again, the whole key is to be authentic and to be vulnerable, to be willing to be vulnerable and honest.
So how do we access the more of the creative power we have within us? I want it all, Howard. I want all of it. I want all that creative energy within me. Woo!
Well, you got plenty of it, Pam, believe me. But how you access it, how you tap into it, is by saturating yourself in material and work that constantly keeps you in the truth of who you are and what's possible for you. Not in the negativity and the limitation. I often say that any thought of imperfection, limit, or lack is a lie about yourself. So that's your litmus test for what's truth and what's a lie. Anything that tells you you're not good enough, not worthy enough, those are all lies. So the more that you can keep yourself in a belief, in an acceptance for who you are, in an appreciation for your path up to this point, in some compassion, and then in the belief that you, like everybody else in this world, is worthy of what they dream about. If they're willing to work hard, put the time in, that anything is possible, and just keep working every day. That is the creative energy. But the core of it, where it emerges from, is the work on the self.
Yeah. The books that we read, who we listen to, getting coaching, like we have a team that gets coaching from you to help them overcome I call it the monkey mind. It just wants to go on and on and on about all the things that we cannot do. It rarely says, oh, you can do this. Is that being present? Is that self-awareness and knowing that that's not really you? These are past thoughts and beliefs?
So it's important to know that the design of the mind and the ego is for boundary. Like when we're little kids, we're running around trying to find out where the boundaries are. And immediately, no, don't touch that. Don't touch that. So we're learning where the boundaries of our world are. When we're young, we want to taste and touch everything, right? If there's anything that doesn't go in our mouth or that we don't want to grab or something, because we're in awe of this world that we're in. So the mind and the ego, for survival, it wants a boundary. It wants a defined boundary. And it gets fearful when there isn't a boundary. What the core of a lot of the work is about is to come to acceptance that there isn't a boundary and that that's okay. And you will not only survive in that space, you'll thrive. Now, once that is accepted, then the monkey mind won't act as much, because you'll be accepting of infinite potential and you'll be open to more things that happen to you as part of the process in getting to where you want to go. The other component of that is coming to a greater sense of faith and trust with the universe or life around you. Some people call it universe, some people call it life, some people call it God, divinity, that life is always connected to us and working with us. Now, people that have been through a lot of very tough situations can have some trust issues with that. But everything that we have gone through has meaning and purpose for us or people that are viewing and watching us go through those things. And so the more we can trust that this universe does have our back, that it's here to support us and help us, the monkey mind will come in less to prevent you from moving out on that expansive spectrum when you're taking those steps. And it'll actually work the opposite, where the ego pushes you, to go out on those in that spectrum. Great athletes, like, let me give you two examples. Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, two of the biggest, of many, but those are two big ones. They were bored when they were up. When Jordan was up by 20 in a game, he was bored. When Tiger Woods was out by 10 shots, he enjoyed winning. But if you to talk to each one of them, I bet they would tell you this. Where they thrived was when the game, for Jordan was when the game was on the line. For Tiger is when he was in a tight match, one shot, because all this creative ability that defined who he is was to be on that creative spectrum could come into play. How am I going to shape this shot over this lake and cut the ball into the, at the flag from a tough angle? That's where he thrived, because that's how they define themselves. So when it comes to life, to learn to embrace challenge and get excited about it, because it's bringing you an opportunity to overcome, to learn, to see how strong you are. So I have this just to finish on this, when fear wells up in me, I turn to it and I say, bring it. Whatever it is, bring it. I'm walking right into it, because, I have a great faith in my eternal nature as a conscious being, as a consciousness. I shouldn't say a being, but a consciousness, as an energy. So whatever it is, I have faith that it's got purpose for me. That's how much I trust life. That's how much I trust divinity. That's how much I trust God. That's how much I trust the universe. I know it's got purpose for me, or it would not be here. And that's a powerful way to handle it.
Wow. So something comes up. Let's say that you want to talk to 10 people, Howard. Just something as simple as this. I want to go back and ask 10 people to join my team. But the fear is all over that, all over it. The best thing to do that I have found is just go do it. Just go do it. Just start. But people don't do that.
Well, that's because they fear the response. And if you fear the response, as it relates specifically to your business, let me speak exactly on this.
Okay.
If you do not believe that you are offering a fantastic opportunity for them to change their life, you better not pick up that phone.
Got it.
It's not going to work. But if you look at all the stories of the people that have changed their lives and bettered their lives and had fun with the community they built and the people and the family and the products, if you don't believe in all that, forget it. But when you do see all that, how can you not pick up the phone and call them and at least offer it to them, at least give them the opportunity, grace them with that ability? That's a whole different take on it. And instead of being fear, it's more like responsibility.
Yeah. I feel responsible. I see someone standing there and I'm like, I've got to tell them. I've got to at least ask. And even if let's say you start today, Howard, and you haven't had one customer, one distributor, anything happen, but you could feed off the stories that you've read, can't you? You can feed off those testimonies of people that have done it. That's how you can get that belief level up. Isn't that true?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you can look and see all the lives that have changed from using the product. And who are you to judge them for what their response is going to be? They could be struggling and praying to God that they could find the next opportunity where they could work from home, raise their kids, meet great people, get great self-empowerment work through the teams and better their lives. And you were afraid that you would look bad, so you didn't give them that opportunity that you're sitting on? Come on.
Wow. You just nailed that. This part right here. Woo! That was awesome. Okay. Couple more things. Why do so many dream about the ideal life while others go out and create it and live it? I love this question. I get this a lot.
Because others love and honor and respect themselves in a way in which their dreams are bigger and believed in and bigger than other people who, again, is now, I don't want to mitigate. Some people are just content and happy at a certain level of life. And they don't want any of that extra work, and they don't want any of that extra abundance or money, and they're happy with a simple life. But for the people that want a greater life that don't do it, it's because they have limiting thoughts and ideas about who they are. They don't see their worth as it relates to the experience.
Wow. All right. I've got, From Time in a Bottle. Love this book. It's dog-eared. I've underlined. I've highlighted. On page 43, you say the resistance you have toward any circumstance is a force of negative energy and actually helps in some way to keep the circumstance alive. That's interesting. So we've got something coming at us that we absolutely do not want. Let's say it's a boss that's on us constantly. It could be a team member. It could be a spouse. It could be a family member. It could be a parent. How can you relate that to this? How do we keep that alive? How do we keep that coming at us when we surely don't want it?
So I'll say it the simplest way. Acceptance is the doorway to transformation. Because through acceptance, the force or the pressure that is on you is to accept that it is. For example, relationship, you're getting a lot of pressure from your spouse. Most likely he or she just wants to be heard and accepted for who they are. But the minute that you do that with your soul, just internally, you give them the grace of, not that you condone any bad behavior, but you're accepting that, okay, for the moment, this is where they're at in their life, then their need to keep coming at you in that very offensive way dies down because they accomplished what they wanted, which was to be heard. So acceptance is the doorway to it. A lot of people don't accept what they don't want because they feel if they accept it, they're accepting it forever. It's just you're accepting it in the moment in order that you can change it. Because if you keep resisting something, that's a force, and force creates counterforce. So you've got this thing that's kept alive, but the minute that you just lay down and accept it, it's got nowhere to live anymore.
I had an experience where Dave would say all the time, "You're on your phone all the time." And I go, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Yeah, you are. You really are. Seriously, Pam, you're on your phone all the time." And I go, "No, I'm not. I'm not on my phone all the time." And this went on for a while to where he just got really upset. And finally I just got calm and I said, "You know what, Dave? I'm on my phone all the time." He goes, "See, I told you." And it was over. And then I became more aware of, when I'm around him, of putting the phone down, paying attention to him, listening to him, being truly with him. But I fought that for so long, Howard, to where I had to deny it. It's almost like I have to deny it. I have to win this.
Yeah, to win it and not feel guilty either. You didn't want to feel guilty. And if you acknowledged it, you would feel guilty. But the point wasn't having to feel guilty. The point was just acknowledging the fact that your husband wanted more time with you and missed that because there was more and more and more consumed by what you were doing. So once you acknowledged it, then everything was better because he felt heard probably. So yeah. So it's important that we stop defending what makes us feel guilty in order to acknowledge it for the betterment of our lives, especially with our spouses.
Okay, I've got a final question for you today. And what is one thing our listeners can do every day that will move them closer to their dreams?
So the one thing that you can do every day is continue to find more of the truth in you that reveals your worth, how loved you are, that produces more self-respect, more self-honor, and more self-empowerment. You can do that every single day. The possibilities you will see in, believe in, and take action towards every day will change immensely. And the way the universe responds to you will also change in a very empowering way.
Give us an example of that. Just one thing. Let's say that we want to lose weight.
So the minute that you see that you are worthy of being that more slender version of yourself, that more fit version, and you're not only going to survive as that version, you're going to thrive. The minute that you see that, your body will automatically change the way it responds to food. What used to like light you up and say, oh, I got to have that, now works reverse. Nope, I'm not having that because I believe in this new version of myself. And you skip one thing during a meal, then you skip one thing during another meal. And over time, this consistent belief in yourself with little changes over time culminate into a big change. And 2 months later, you've lost 30 pounds or 20 pounds. And, I'm working with somebody that in 2 months lost 50 pounds just by shifting the way he looked at who he was. And once he had that epiphany, it was like he was empowered. He didn't gorge anymore. He ate when he was full and stopped. And just by doing that, lost 50 pounds. And he's on his way to another 100. That would be a real world example of that. But it took self-reflection to get there.
Sure. It's just like, that's with me in exercise. I decided, I'm going to have these grandchildren. When Kay told me she was pregnant with Kennedy, I'm like, I need to be able to get up off the floor and have a baby in my arms. I'm not sure I can do that. So I got back in the gym and I just started. Howard, I thought, well, you know what? I can get muscles again. This can happen for me. I can do this. And my whole mind shifted to where before that even the day before, I don't have time. I don't have time to work out. That, you know what? You're okay. Just accept where you're at. But just that one thing, when she said, I'm pregnant, it just did everything for me. And I've been working out for 3 years ever since that. So I have so loved our time together. Thank you so much. And it's been amazing. Amazing. We got to do this again because I've got so many more questions. So,
sure.
So for those of you who are listening, if you want more information about Howard's books, his private coaching, you can reach Howard at Howard Falco. That's HowardFalco.com and TotalMindSports.com as well. He's also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So Howard, we feel blessed. Thank you so much for everything.
It's my honor. It's great to see you and great to talk to you and love to do it anytime again, Pam. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Pam Sowder Podcast. Be sure to check out my website at PamSowder.com. There you can get inspired, listen to more podcasts, read and submit Ask Pam questions that could be featured on an upcoming podcast episode. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, much love and appreciation.